The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, hello. Hope everyone is doing well this morning. Looks like we still have a few people who are logging in. Looks like a really good turnout so far. So we're just going to give a few more seconds before we get started for those who are logging in right now. So let's give them, so we'll stay on hold for another 10 seconds or so. Okay, so it looks like we're ready to get started. I hope everyone can hear me, and we'll just move on to the next slide. Just to kind of introduce myself, my name is Dathan Ellis. I'm the Customer Success Manager here at Windward Studios. I'm actually transitioning from a sales engineer into my current Customer Success Manager role. It hasn't completed the transition fully yet, but it's still underway, and you probably will still see me come in and conduct some of the webinar training sessions in the near future. So I'll still be involved with training some of the webinars and then also involved with current clients and making them successful, helping them get all their systems in order and best practices and all their licenses that they need and so on like that, and so on and so forth. So anything technical related, I'm usually going to be involved in with our current clients. And then, of course, our sales engineers will be involved with even more up-to-date sales interactions and technical problems, along with our support help desk team. Okay, and the other thing is you may have already noticed a GoToMeeting toolbar on your desktop. If you have a question at any time during the training, please just go ahead and click where that arrow is pointing to, that raise your hand icon. So you can ask a question at any time. More than likely, I'll probably wait for the very end of the webinar to actually go through our session and answer any questions. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, like you have a hard time hearing me or seeing what's displayed, you can always click on that hand icon, raise your hand icon, and ask your question then too. And I'll see my chat and my question prompts on my other screen, but a lot of times I don't see them right away. So that's usually why I wait till the end to answer any questions you have. Okay, again, this is the Intermediate AutoTag Training webinar. We assume that you already know how to install AutoTag, some of the basic elements, how to include tags into your templates, how to connect to your data source. And you've probably been working with AutoTag a little while now. So this is going to move a little faster than our last basic training webinar, which was last week with Ryan. And to kind of give you an idea of my demo environment, what machine I'm running on is a Windows 10 machine, which is running 64-bit Office. And I always recommend Office 64-bit versus 32-bit because it just utilizes all the memory on your machine. Usually 32-bit Office is limited to about 2 gigs of memory. So when you're using a lot of data or querying a lot of data from your data sources, you may run into an out-of-memory error because of the data that you're trying to pull back. So if you can get 64-bit, install that. And then the current version of AutoTag that I'm using is the latest released published version, which is the 15.2.57.0. You can always find that on our website at windward.net also. Okay, to kind of give you a high-level overview of what we'll discuss today, we'll go into depth with the for each tag. We should have touched on it last week, and we did. But what I want to talk about is how to group your data using nested for each tags. Then we'll also talk about using some of the advanced properties within a for each tag, how to create a column-based for each versus a row-based for each list or table. We'll also go over how to conditionally format some of your out tags. We'll use the equation editor, more specifically the sum function. We provide many functions for you, up to about 55, 60 functions that you can use within Word and Excel and even PowerPoint. We also will go over the if tag and switch case tags. Those are basically conditional formatting or conditional logic within your templates. I'll actually briefly go over the import tag because likely I'm not going to have enough time to really go in depth with it, but we have plenty of examples for you to reference for those. And then at the very end, I'll get into the Excel differences with AutoTag and kind of touch on some of those situations for many of you who are using Excel. Okay, so to get started, let's go ahead and start discussing and showing you the for each tag. So the for each tag basically does three things. It grabs a set of data, then it loops or iterates through that set of data that is retained from your data source, and then it repeats all the content between the beginning and ending for each tag. So anything that comes between any element, whether that's chart, text, other tags, it doesn't matter, will loop. With each iteration, your loop will actually repeat the content between the beginning and ending for each tag. So the for each tags are basically bookend tags. I'll also talk about the location of the starting and ending for each tags, why that's important, to show you why. And then we'll go into nesting for each tags within an outer for each tag. So how to group your data. So we'll go over that pretty briefly. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So what I'm going to do is, before we move on to any more with the for each tag, I am actually going to open up a separate blank Word document. And what we'll do is actually click on the AutoTag Manager tab, and you'll see that Samples button in the Getting Started Guide section of the menu ribbon. So I'll click on that Samples button. And you'll notice that it'll open up the sample templates on your left here. You'll also see an additional tab. It's already selected for me, but you can select that if you'd like. And then what we'll focus on is the tag tutorials for SQL databases. Now, we also have tag tutorials for XML and soon to be JSON, but for right now, we're just going to focus on SQL. It basically gives you all the same functionality with SQL as it does with XML or JSON. The only difference is a slight difference in the wizards, but for the most part, it's all the same. It's just a different query language querying your data source or your database. So you'll notice over here on the right, when you click on the tag tutorials for SQL, you'll see on the fourth example, the for each tag sample. Let's go ahead and click on that. Okay, so let me zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. But this is our for each tag sample template. And where I want to focus is this very first sample here. It is possible to use the for each tag without a table. So most of the time when you show for each tags within a table, like you see in this next example, I want to show you using a for each tag, just creating a simple list. So let's take a look at this for each tag and find out what data it's returning from our data source. So I'll click on that for each tag, go to our AutoTag tab, and we'll click Preview. Now this will show us exactly what's being returned. You can see there's a list of categories. So we have category ID, we have the category name, the description, a picture, and it looks like that's all the information we have there. So we're returning almost everything within that category table in our SQL database. Okay, so what is that next out tag going to show us? This pulls the data we need from the for each tag. What is this out tag going to show us on output? Okay, if we preview that, it shows us it's just giving a list of category IDs, 1 through 8. Now let's select the next out tag and preview that. Okay, so this one's actually showing us the category name. So from our categories table, we are showing the category name, so beverages, condiments, confections, and so on, for all 8 categories. Okay, so to kind of give you an idea what this will look like on output, let's just go ahead and generate the output of this template. Just click on the output button. What I'll do is I'll split the screen so you can see this a little bit better. So over here on the left-hand side is that sample we just showed you from the template, and then over here on the right is our output. Now you'll notice right away, right there, you'll see that we're actually providing the category ID, a dash, and then the category name. And that's actually showing up on several different lines in our output. Well, how does that happen? How is that happening? So let's take a look at our template on the left-hand side here. I want to close this output. So we take a look at our template. And I'm going to use the show hide paragraph button. And I'm going to select that. Now you'll notice there, it kind of reveals to why it's coming up on different lines, and that's where the cursor, you'll see that it's actually providing a carriage return right after that out tag. So if we were to output this again, I could show you that with each iteration through the loop, we're providing the category name and the category ID on a separate line. You'll see that wherever that carriage return sits is exactly where it'll sit on output. So this is the importance of anything that comes between the beginning and ending for each tags will actually be shown on your output the same exact way within your template. Now to prove this to you, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that carriage return after that out tag. And that forces my ending for each tag to show up on the same line. And now when I do that, and then I output my template, let's take a look at what that's going to do. It's asking me to save it, so I'll just go ahead and save that. You'll see that now all my categories and category IDs actually show up on one line until it reaches, let me expand this a little bit so you can see what's happening. So you can see it's all showing up on one single line until it reaches the margin of the page and then just continues on the next line. So you can tell that anything between those two tags, you can see we have an out tag, we have a space, we have a dash, another space, and then an out tag. So that's why it's actually not even formatted well, because there's not even a space between that first category name and then that second category ID. So again, anything that comes between these beginning and ending for each tag is really important for displaying your layout correctly when you generate the output from your template. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to kind of go over. I'm going to go ahead and undo the changes I just made in my template there. I'll save it. The next thing I wanted to kind of go over was the tag tree. Now, some of you may not know about the tag tree already, but it really comes in handy when you have a lot of tags in your template. So I'm going to click on the tag tree button. And when I select that and expand the main story simply means the main document of the template. You can see that I actually have several for each tags within this sample template. Now, one of the really cool features of the tag tree is that you may have a ton of tags within your template. So maybe you've adopted a template that somebody else created and you just want to see how it's formatted. Well, you can always reference a tag really quickly using the tag tree. So let's pretend like you have a tag that you want to update. Well, you just expand the tag tree and you can double click a tag. So if we want to double click this customer's loop here, it'll actually take me directly to that tag within my template. See, it's highlighted right there. The customer's loop for each tag is highlighted. So a really cool feature about the for each tag and the tag tree. The other cool thing about this is if I double click again, you'll notice that below there is just a quick glance at what this for each tag is doing and its properties. So we have a properties tab and a query tab. So I can look at the query that's related to this for each loop to see what data we're returning back in our data set. And then I can look at the properties. I can see that restart is true. I can see it's enabled and so on. So just any tag that you have within your tag tree, you can take a look at those really quickly with this quick view in your tag tree. Okay, so since this is the area I want to focus on, what we'll do next is show you what this for each sample is actually doing. So what we're doing is grouping data. And the way you group data with AutoTag is by using nested for each tags. So let's go ahead and take a look at this outer for each loop we have here and preview it, see what data we're returning. Okay, so the data we're returning here is just customer data. So we have customer ID and then the company name of that customer. So we have the customer IDs there and the company name, it looks like we're just returning those companies that start with the letter A. So we actually have a lot more companies, but we're only filtering those ones with A. Okay. The next thing, let's take a look at this company name. So likely that's what we're returning, but let's go ahead and preview it just to make sure. Okay, yeah. So now we're just returning the company name from this customer's loop for each tag. So you can see those 4 company names again there. Okay, but what about that enter for each tag? What is it doing? Let's take a closer look at that. So if we preview the enter for each tag, okay, here we go. So now we're returning a lot more data. It looks like we're returning the orders for one specific customer. You'll see here we have the customer ID, the employee ID, order date, required date. There's a lot more information there, the address and so on. So it looks like we're returning a lot of data here within that enter for each. We're collecting a lot of data. And then that next out tag, what are we actually displaying here? And we're just displaying the order IDs. So that's all it's going to do. It's going to give us a list of company names and then the order IDs or orders that belong to that specific company. Well, how is it doing that exactly? Well, let's go ahead and show you the output so you can see what the output's doing here. I'm going to click Save. And we'll expand this. Okay, so over here on the right, let's go ahead and scroll all the way down till we get to our section we need. Okay, there it is. Like second to the last page or last 2 or 3 pages. Okay, so you can see over here on the left, here's our outer for each, or inner for each with our 2 out tags. So the only thing we're displaying in our out tags is the company name and the order ID. So you can see that there. So we have the company name, the first one on the list, and all the orders that belong to that specific company. And then if we scroll down to the next line, you can see that we have a new company name and that list of order IDs that pertain to that specific company. Well, how do we know that these specific order IDs actually belong to Alfred's company name? Let's take a look at that. So I'm going to close this output again. And we're going to take a closer look at this for each tag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the enter for each tag and click the wizard button in the menu. Okay, let me expand this so you can see this a little bit better. And these are all the columns that we're returning. I'm just going to minimize that middle section there so you can take a look at the filtered section. This is where we need to focus on how we determine what order IDs are tied to what customer. So you can see here, and we are filtering all our data based on the orders table and the customer ID within the orders table. And we're just setting that equal to this var name 10 customer ID. Now, AutoTag makes it really easy for you to select this and choose a different variable which to choose from. But right now, what's actually happening is that var name 10, which is the variable name that AutoTag uses to reference that outer for each tag. So if I were to move this over a little bit, you can see this var name 10 is actually this customer's outer for each loop. So what we're doing is tying this inner for each loop to this outer for each loop by making sure the customer ID in the outer for each loop is the same as the inner or the orders ID, customer ID, primary key. So as long as those primary keys are the same within both tables, you can reference those and be sure they're particular to that specific customer. So you can see even if I scroll over here on the right, you'll notice there's a preview pane of the data that we'll return. So you can see there's the order IDs for all of ALFKI customer IDs. So that's how we know we've tied it exactly to the orders to that specific customer. Okay, so again, when you're grouping data to ensure that you're actually tying the inner for each tag to the outer for each tag, you want to use nested for each tags. So if you have other data that you're trying to nest similarly, I would recommend doing it the same way. You'll use the same format for XPath using XML and JSON path for JSON. Okay, the last thing I wanted to kind of go over in this sample template is just above this page on the second page. Okay, so typically we're used to going over and creating for each tag tables based on row output. So basically, this is a typical table with for each tags that will output per row, so top to bottom. But what if you want to create a for each tag based on columns instead of rows? Well, that's where this section comes in handy. The for each tag can be used for the column major expansion. Now I'm going to just turn off really quickly that show high paragraph marking so you can see this a little bit better. Okay, so there's a couple of things with the column-based for each that I really want to point out. Probably three things actually. But before we get started, let's just take a look at what this data is that we're returning for this for each tag. So we'll click on that for each tag, click preview. Okay, so we're just basically showing a list of categories. We like this category data. So where we use that same category data like we used before in that first example. Okay, what will we actually display though for our alt tags? Click preview. Okay, so now we're just displaying a list of category names. Okay, so to kind of give you an idea of what this will look like on output as it is right now, let's just go ahead and generate the output. I'll split the screen so you can see this better. And I'll scroll down a little further. Okay, and there it is. So here's our sample. So what we're actually doing is returning that list of category names from our alt tag in column-based format from left to right. This is different from what you're used to probably than creating new rows top to bottom. You'll see that we're actually returning all those category names. You kind of see the formatting's a little off because of our margins. Our margin is a little too thin there, but it's trying to squeeze that entire table within that output file that you see there. So how are we actually doing this? Let's take a closer look. So I'm going to close the output. And what I'm going to do is, you have a couple options here. I can double click the for each tag to reveal the tag editor. You can do that, and I usually prefer is just double clicking a tag to open it up. Or I can select the edit tag button in the menu ribbon. So what we'll do is we'll actually double click the for each tag. Excuse me. And what this does is opens up the more advanced tag editor. So you can see there's a few things we can do here. We can preview our data, just like this same preview within our menu ribbon. So I can click that preview button and see all that category information that this is returning. You can also see the actual SQL query language that's used to actually pull the data from our categories table and all the category columns that we're returning. You'll also see over here on the left, we have a list of all the tables and views and stored procedures we have access to. But you'll also see that we can access the wizard. So if we, instead of typing in our SQL, we can actually use the wizard, like I showed just before in our menu ribbon. You can click on that to open that up. We'll actually go over equations and adding an equation in a little bit. So I'll go over that in a minute. And then you can even navigate. If you want to move on to the next tag, you click next, and it'll show you the next alt tag there. So you can see that's highlighted and what that's returning. I'll click back to actually focus on the for each tag, and you can tell it's the for each tag because of that heading there in their title of the window. And the last thing I want to kind of go over is this may actually be the color scheme that I'm using. You can right click to change your color scheme. If you select the color scheme and then just kind of highlight over those or click whatever option you choose from. I'm using a base 16 Ocean Dark, that's what I prefer, but I think we start off with base 16 Ocean Light or Plain as default. But I want to click on the Properties tab also, and here's where we want to kind of take a closer look. So you have a few properties here. You have advanced properties, you have standard, and then tag. I want to minimize the advanced and standard. And where I want you to look is this order attribute in our tag properties. You'll see in our order attribute, we have a column based for each tag. Well, if I select that and click on the drop-down list, you can see we have a couple other options. We have legacy and we have row. Now, legacy and row are pretty much the same thing. So by default, when you add a for each tag, it's going to choose legacy for you. But legacy and row have very slight differences, and those differences are out on our wiki, so you can always take a closer look at those. But we just want to be sure for a column-based for each tag that the column order attribute is selected. So as long as that's selected, everything will work exactly the way we need. Now, the last thing I wanted to point out is this ending for each tag. Now, likely you don't do anything really with the ending for each tag, but just place it where you want the content to stop repeating. But this is different for the column-based for each tag. You'll notice in the example above that we're actually placing the end for each tag outside the table. And the reason that is because we don't want to generate a blank row at the very end of our output. So if we have like a list of 4 customers or 4 company names that we want to list, we don't want another 5th row showing absolutely nothing, blank. So that's why we put that ending for each tag outside the table. But when it comes to the column-based for each, you want it inside the table. So you can see that we actually created another row and placed that ending for each inside that row. It's really important for that. Now, the next thing you'll do, and this is the only time you'll really update your ending for each tag, is I need to double click that to open up the tag editor. And you can see it's basically very limited functionality here. All we can do is basically open up the properties tab. And you'll notice this tag attribute, delete row. You see that selected as true. So what's happening on output is we're actually deleting this blank row where this is actually that end for each is located on output, so it doesn't show that blank row that we don't need. So to kind of show you how to prove this to you, I can actually change this to false, click save, and now let's test the output. We should get a blank row after that. Let's go ahead and click output. Split the screen. And we'll scroll down a little further. Okay, there it is. So before you saw all the category names listed with one row, but there you can see there's our extra blank row. But because this ending for each tag attribute, delete row attribute, was set to false, that's why we're actually showing it. And sometimes you need it to show. So you have that option to either show or hide this row, but we recommend that you not for most cases. So 3 things with the column-based for each tag. You'll update the order to column for your beginning for each tag. And then for your ending for each tag, you'll place it within the table. And then you'll make sure the delete row is set to true attribute. Okay, so that's it for the for each tag for the most part. Let's go back to our slides really quickly. Now, the next thing I want to kind of go over is, like I mentioned before, we have 2 different styles. We have the row style, which is the default style, and then the column-based style for each tag. And then again, the only time you'll use or update your ending for each tag is when you want to use that delete row option there. Okay, so for the equation editor, again, we have literally over 55, I think 60 equations available to you as of today. It says 50, but ignore that. And then you can also have the option to use a wizard to select your equation data. And then we'll talk about how to format out tags conditionally, using conditional formatting in one of the samples that I have. So let me just kind of open up that sample that I have here. All right. Okay, so this is where we'll actually show you how to use a sum function. And you'll see that we have a for each tag within a table in this sample. But let's take a look at the sales for each tag and see what data we're returning. Let's click preview. Okay, so it looks like we're just returning a list of salespeople, and then the number of calls they've made, leads generated, and the total sales amount. And that's honestly all that we're actually displaying here within our out tags. You see there's a salesperson, number of calls, leads generated, sales amount. Okay, so let's pretend we have a requirement that we want to show red text for those sales reps who aren't meeting their quota for the month. So let's pretend like, okay, for the sales amount, when a sales amount is returned for that row, we want to show red text. Well, how do you do that? Well, we can double click the sales amount out tag, open up the tag editor. We know it's in our out tag because of what the title of the window says. But we can also click on the properties tab. Let me expand this so you can see it. Okay, so in the tag properties, you see this condition. This is where we can set conditional formatting based on a certain condition within the alt tag. So you'll notice to the right of that, there's a bunch of funky text there. I can either type that in manually, or I can click the ... button there on the right, and that'll open up that wizard, that conditional formatting rule manager wizard. Now you'll see within this condition, every time you try to evaluate a value within your data source or within a tag, you'll always want to start it off with that equal sign. So you can see there's equal sign and then the dollar squiggly bracket. That's basically stating this is a variable one that we're referencing. The var1 is actually that for each tag that we saw earlier. And it's basically saying from the for each tag, if the sales amount is less than $8,000, then I want to format my text. I want to format the for color there in red. And that's what that hex code is, FF0000. But instead of having to type that in, I can click on this wizard button to the right of that format. And I have a few other options. I can italicize the text on output. I can make it bold, underline, strike through. There's a text color. We can use text color in the back. And if it's within a table or a cell, we can even adjust the borders, the line style, the line color of the borders, the cell color, if you want to fill in the cell color or the alignment. Whatever you need to do conditionally, you can pretty much do it through the format options wizard. But as you can see, the text color there, I'm just providing the hex code for that value. Now, unfortunately, the only way you can, if you're looking up a different color like a magenta or an aqua, some other color that your company uses or wants to use as a requirement, you can just Google search the hex code for that color and then provide it here. I just know that's red because I set up the sample for you, but that's what we want it to appear on output is that red text. So we'll leave it as FF and then those 4 zeros. So click OK. And then when we're done setting up our rule, we can click OK, and then it populates that condition attribute for us. Now, I want to go ahead and click Save Tag and show you what this is going to look like on output. So I'm going to click on output. I want to click Save. And there we go. So if I split the screen here, you'll see on the left-hand side is our template. On the right-hand side, now we're showing all the salespeople, the number of calls, and those sales amounts. So anything less than $8,000, you remember that, is going to show up in red text. So that's one way you can conditionally format your specific alt tags based on a result set you get from your data source. Now, let's go ahead and sum up all these sales amounts using that sum function. So let's go back to our template. And let's create an additional row there. And what we'll do is we'll actually delete that ending for each tag and place it inside the table. So what we'll do is go ahead and click on delete tag, and then I'll add another ending for each tag within the table row. And that's something you typically don't want to do when it comes to a row-based for each tag. But we're going to do it in this case because we actually want a separate blank row to appear on output. So this is one of those cases you'll do that. And so we'll add some total text here, and we'll even highlight that. We'll format it. We'll make it bold. We'll right align that within the cell. And then next to that, we want to provide our sum function. And in order to do that, we need to add another alt tag. So let's go back to AutoTag tab and select to add an alt tag here. Okay, so that places our alt tag within that last cell there. And now I need to double click that alt tag to open the tag editor. And this is where we'll use the equation button to actually format or show that some value of all those sales amounts. So I want to click on that equation button. And what that's going to do is have us bring up the insert function prompt. Now I can select all of my functions to choose from, or I can narrow them down to, like, say, the math and trig section. That's where we want to be. And these are all alphabetized. And we want to go to the sum function. So we'll go drag it down to, there it is, second to the last one. So we'll go ahead and select that, and that kind of gives you a description. It adds all the numbers in a range of values. That's what we want to do. We want to add all those sales amounts up. So we'll click OK. And you'll notice at the top, there's our sum function with our equation, our equal sign there just before it. And we have a list of number text boxes we could choose from. Well, I can easily select the wizard button next to number 1. That opens up our SQL wizard. And if I want to total up all the sales amounts within the sales table, all I have to do is simply drag that sales amount to our column section in the middle. And there you can see, these are all the sales amounts for all those salespeople. That's exactly what I want to add a total up. So now that I've done that, I can click OK. And you'll notice it gives me a preview of what that first value that it will add there. And then it also gives me the total value, $64,000 that you see there. So that gives me a preview of what it's going to look like on output. And then you'll notice that AutoTag actually automatically used the SQL in the wizard to actually select the sales amount from our sales table with our sum function there. It gave us all the syntax for that. So once I'm ready to total all those sales amounts, I can click OK. And I can even preview this to make sure it looks correct. Yes, it does. And now we can save the tag. Now, before I actually output this to show you the final total, let's go ahead and select that tag and format it. So we'll make it bold. And we'll go back to the AutoTag tab. And the last thing we need to do is format it for currency. So if I output it right now, it's just going to show a decimal format. But all those other sales amounts were actually dollar values. So let's go ahead and format this out tag using our Format Data button. We can select currency, decimal places 2. Okay, that looks perfect. We'll apply that format, click close, save it, and then we'll output the file. And there you go. So now you can see we have that final total row. We have that additional blank row that we've added because we added the ending for each tag inside. And then we've had that total grand sum amount for all those sales amounts there. So that's how you add a function. You can utilize other functions besides the sum function. That's how you simply add a sum function in this case, which is probably the most popular one. And then how do you conditionally format tags or text from your out tags there in red? Okay. So that's it for this sample. Let's go back to our slides really quickly. Okay, so the next thing I want to go over is conditional formatting using if tags and switch tags. So let's go ahead and go over that really quickly. So what we're going to do is go back to our for each sample. And I'm going to open up the samples button again. Oh, that's correct. So let me close this out. Let me open up a new Word document. Oh, that's not good. Yeah, I want to send that error report. I don't know what happened there, but we'll close it. So just ignore that error, okay? So when I open up the Word document, I want to click on the AutoTag Manager tab. And now I'm going to choose the samples button again. Okay, that looks better. So now we have all our samples back to where we were in our tag tutorial section. And what I want to do is show you the if tag sample template. So we'll select that 5th one over. So here it gives us lots of examples on how to use the if tag. I just want to go over the first couple because it's for the sake of time. So you can see in that first example there, performing simple comparisons. So if you need to conditionally format your templates, maybe to show or hide certain elements within your template, that's where you use the if tag and the switch case tags. So all this does basically, if this beginning if tag evaluates as true, it will show everything between the beginning if tag and the ending if tag, which will simply be this out tag. So what evaluation are we doing for this beginning if tag here? So let's just go ahead and double click that. Okay, so all we're doing here for this beginning if tag is evaluating is 1, you see that equal sign, is 1 less than 2. Well, we know 1 will be less than 2, so this if tag is a very simple example. But basically this if tag is actually going to evaluate as true on output, so we'll actually show that out tag. If this was false, we would skip that out tag, go to the ending if tag, and then continue on within our template. But let me go ahead and show you what that will look like on output. So let's go ahead and click output. Split the screen. Now you see over here on the right, there it is. 1 is less than 2 as some text. Well, let's look at this out tag. Is that actually what is in that out tag, and that's why we're displaying it? Let's take a look. Let's preview that out tag. Yes, it is. So you can see here, the out tag that we're displaying is simple text, 1 is less than 2. Exactly the same way, just formatted in the color, font style, and everything that we choose within the template. Now you also have the ability to use else tags. So you can see that we have another example here. We have another if tag, we have an out tag, an else tag, and then another out tag with an ending if tag. Now, in this case, if we were to evaluate this specific if tag and it were to evaluate false, it would skip everything between the if and the else tag and then show everything after the else. So if this equals false, what else is there to show? Show this next output. So let's go ahead and preview this. If this were to be false, we should see the specific out tag output. Let's go ahead and preview that out tag. As you can see here, it's just simple text. It says 3 is less than or equal to 4. So that's the text we'll return. But what are we evaluating here in the if tag? Let's take a look. Okay, so you see the equal sign. 3 is 3 greater than 4? No, so that's false. So if we were to preview this, it would give us a result of false. So that means we're going to skip everything between this beginning if tag, go to the else tag, and then show whatever's after the else tag. So that's using an else tag within your if tags to show you alternative text or output based on the data you provide or evaluation you're providing within your data sources. The last thing I wanted to show you in this really quickly is you'll notice you can have nested if tags. You'll notice there's that if tag, else tag, and another if tag. So if you have 2 things that you're trying to evaluate, 2 questions you're trying to ask, then go ahead and use the if tag. If you have more than 2, I would say 3 or more, I would recommend using the switch case tag. So if you have multiple comparisons that you have to do within one simple area of your sample template or your template, you'll want to use the switch case tags. And let me show you that sample really quickly. So I'm going to close this out again. I'll open up our Getting Started guide. And where I want you to see is this. We have 2 switch tag examples. Let's open up that second one, switch tag 2. Okay, so you'll see here where we're just simply created a table here. We're returning a list of customers, their first name, last name, address, city, state, and so on. And then you'll notice over here on the right is our switch tag. So there we have a switch country. You may notice that that's actually a little darker red for the switch tag. And then you have your ending switch tag. So just like the if tag, you have to have beginning and ending switch tag. And everything between those will be evaluated based on a case, and that's where the case tags will come in. So you'll notice here that in this switch, basically we're saying, okay, let's start evaluating some case tags within this switch tag. You'll notice if the value equals Canada, it will show this small little Canada flag icon. If, however, it does not equal Canada, it equals the US, it'll show the US flag. If it's not the US, it'll show the Mexican flag. If it's not the Mexican, it'll show the Australian flag. So it'll go through each iteration of the loop, try to find the one that pertains, and then show whatever is after that case tag on output. So let's go ahead and show you the output of this really quickly. Okay, I'm going to split the screen. So as you can see, here's our switching case tags. You'll notice that we have several flags within or images within this single cell, but we're only showing the Australian flag for this specific customer because they're actually in Victoria. They're actually in Australia. So if we were to scroll down a little bit, you'll start noticing that there's American flags for Washington and Oregon. If we scroll down a little bit further, there's some Canadian flags. So basically, the switch case is helping you evaluate more than like 2 or 3 scenarios. So if you have multiple questions you're trying to ask, I definitely recommend you switch case tag to actually determine what you want to show on your output for each iteration through this specific for each loop. Okay, so the last sample I want to show you really quickly is the import tag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this sample template. I'll go back to our PowerPoint slide. So we went over the if tag, how you place the starting and ending if tags in the proper place where you want to show or hide specific elements within your template. And then whatever, if it evaluates as true, it'll show everything between those tags, else it'll move on to the next thing that you want to show. Switch case tags is just simply a shorter way of writing multiple if tags. Again, if you have 3 or more, use a switch case tag. And I don't have it listed here, but let's go ahead and open up one of the import tag sample templates. So let's go ahead and choose, let's use this. We have 3 import tags here, samples that we can choose from. I'm going to select the first one. Okay, so in this first one, kind of gives you a list of everything. Like we're importing an image here, we're importing a PDF file, a static PDF file. We're also importing a sub-template, another docx file, a completely different file with its own formatting. We can import those into our master template. You can also import text or even HTML if necessary. So the only thing I want to really point out here is this PDF tag. So if you're actually importing a PDF file, like static PDF file within your template, it won't show unless you actually output to PDF. So if you're outputting to a docx format, the PDF won't actually display because it's just a completely different format than docx that docx or Office cannot render. The only way you can see your PDF import tag or PDF files that you import into your master template is by outputting to a PDF format. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. But you can go ahead and check this, and if we clicked the output button here, I can kind of show you, it really doesn't show anything. It doesn't provide anything for that PDF import tag. You'll notice, let's see, there it is. So we're actually displaying, and let me split the screen again. So we're actually displaying that image for the Windward Reports logo. But you'll notice there, just below that, we should have a PDF file, and then it's skipping straight on to the next one, which would be the docx template. So we're actually not displaying anything for that import tag since it's not PDF format. Okay, so it looks like we have about like 12, 11 minutes left on our webinar. So let's take a look at Excel differences. So one of the things I wanted to point out with Excel differences, you can have many tags within a single cell. All the native Excel macros that you typically use within Excel, we support those in conjunction with the equations or functions within your tags that you want to use, the AutoTag functions. Also, if tags are longer than, usually in the formula bar, you'll have anything over 255, 256 characters. Well, it'll give you an error. What we do is automatically concatenate that for you. And then, of course, any charts, native charts that you use within Excel, that's supported also for output. So let's take a look at Excel really quickly. So what I want to do is I want to open up an Excel file here. I want to choose blank workbook. And to kind of really quickly go through this, let me grab some water really quick. Just to kind of show you some Excel differences with versus Word, I'm going to quickly just connect to my data source. I'm going to connect to our SQL Server data source sample, MS-SQL. Once I'm connected, it'll open up my data bin. You'll see all my tables and views. Well, to kind of show you what to do here, instead of dragging an employees table and making it easy on me, I can easily drag this table over. I want to go ahead and turn off my highlighter. Sometimes my highlighter, my mouse gives me problems, so I just turn that off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to manually create a for each tag. I'm going to go back to our AutoTag tab, click on the tags button, select for each tag. I want to give this a nickname. We'll call it employees. And let me expand this B column here so you can see this a little bit better. Now this is a for each tag. And now we need to select the employees data. So we'll just go to the data tree here and select the employees table. Now you may have noticed in my formula bar, there we have that equal auto tag in the formula. And you'll notice that there's our for each tag right there. And then there's our select statement for selecting all that employee information from our employees table that you see here. So you can see how we're using lots more characters within this formula bar. But as long as we have this concatenation here, that you see that ampersand there, and then there's another one just after that. We're using a couple of those so we don't reach that 255, 256 character limit. So we've got all the data that we're returning from this for each tag. Let's take a look. Let's preview this really quickly. Okay, so there we go. We have employee ID, last name, first name, and so on. Address, lots of information there. But we don't, even though we're getting all this information, we only want to actually show a little bit. So let's go ahead and escape from there. Let's go ahead. Now you can include multiple tags within one cell in Excel. So let me do that really quickly. Expand this a little bit more. Let's say you have your for each tag for your employees gathering your data set. Now let's go ahead and add an out tag in that specific cell. So I'll click on out. Now here's where we prompt you, select where you wish to insert a tag. Now I can either do that after the tag, before the tag, anywhere within this prompt. Anywhere I place that cursor and click is where my out tag will appear. So I'll just do it right after that employees for each tag. And there you can see it. That's where it actually inserts the out tag. Now you'll know, okay, so here's one of the issues you'll face is because you have multiple tags within one cell, well, how do you know if you highlight one cell what tag you're selecting, right? So what tag is it selecting? Well, how you know is in your menu. You see the tag properties? This is out tag. We know we're on the out tag there. We're selecting that within AutoTag because the out tag properties named there. So let's go ahead and give this a nickname. We'll call it, say, first name. Oh, let me get rid of that W. Looks bad. Okay. And now we need to, because we're still selecting the out tag properties, I can go to the data tree and quickly select the first name from our for each tag, that for name 1. So I'll select that first name there. And then I can even preview the out tag. And that shows me a list of the first names that I'm going to return for my employees. Okay, so that's how you add tags to your cells. Let's go ahead and add another tag in the column C there. Let's go ahead and add another out tag. We'll give this a nickname of last name. And then we'll select in the data tree the actual last name from our for each data, for name 1. And then we'll expand this further and we'll add another out tag. Let's just say we want to add the country for each employee. So I'll go ahead and change that nickname, make it look better. And then we can go ahead and select the country value from our for each tag. Okay, so the last thing we need to do, we have our beginning for each tag. You'll notice that the difference already is these tags aren't color-coded. Well, actually, Word provides us that ability to do that, but Excel doesn't. So Microsoft limits us on what we can do with an Excel. Word's always a little bit more powerful and more customizable. So whenever possible, use Word. But if you have to use Excel, which happens for a lot of clients, go ahead. Just know that your tags will not be pretty like it is in Word. It will not be color-coded. That's why you want to always use the open and close brackets like I'm using there. So now we need to add our ending for each tag. Remember, we have to have, if we have a beginning for each tag, we have to have an ending for each tag. Let's go ahead and select the ending for each tag. And now you can even change the nickname there. And let's go ahead and output this. What is this going to look like on output so far? Let's go ahead and save this file, and we'll save it to our desktop. Book 1 is fine. We'll output this, and there we go. So now we have all of our first names of our employees, our last names, and then in column D is the country value. Okay, so what if you need, for some reason, you need to add some text between this Nancy value or some text after the Nancy value? How do you do that with multiple tags in one cell? So if we went to back, you can tell right now, here's our template. You can see they have the employees for each tag, and then that first name out tag, it's right next to, against each other within that specific cell. So if you need to, for example, add text before Nancy and after Nancy, well, this is how you'll do it. So you'll go in your formula bar here, and you'll find here's your for each tag, the start of it, and then you'll notice the out tag. Here's the next one. So you see there's a greater than, less than there. Here's our out tag. So if we wanted text between these two tags, guess what we'll do? We'll actually add a space, ABC, another space. Whatever text you want to show before this out tag, just type that in between those two tags there. If you wanted to show after, you can always add another space, DEF, right after the out tag. You'll notice that slash greater than symbol. That's when you'll know the end of that out tag is there. So we can do that. We can click enter for the formula bar, and you'll notice there in our cell, ABC has been provided for us with a couple of spaces, but you'll notice DEF is not there. But not to worry, DEF won't show in the cell until we actually output this file. Let's go ahead and do that. Save it. And there you go. See the differences? I'll close the data bin here. So you'll see ABC space Nancy space DEF. Even though it doesn't show in the template for that last DEF text, as long as it's in that formula bar, it will show on output. The last thing I wanted to show you really quickly before we wrapped up, looks like there's about 2 minutes left, is let's pretend like you need to delete a tag within the cell. Maybe you have multiple tags within the cell. What if you need to delete just the first name out tag? Well, all you'll have to do is highlight the cell that you want to delete the tag from, click the delete tag button, and you'll notice it says select the tag you wish to delete. And all you'll do is just click on the tag you want to get rid of. So we'll click on that first name tag, and there you go. You see it's gone. Now notice, because ABCDEF is left in our formula, it's after the tag. Again, it won't show within the cell until we actually produce output. And the other cool thing about this is where these next and previous buttons come in really handy. Let's say you have a lot of tags within your worksheet. You can click on next to move on the next tag. If you have multiple tags within this cell, let's go ahead and add a new one really quickly just to give you an idea. So I just added that next out tag after the last name. I can click previous, and that will still remain highlighted, the specific C2 cell, but I can actually navigate on which tag I want to use. So we can tell what tag we're using by clicking next and previous. I can give this a nickname. The second out tag, we'll call it state. Okay, and now you can see that state out tag has been updated with the nickname. The last thing I wanted to show you within Excel is you do only have, you will never have an option to convert an Excel template to a docx format or a PPTX, which is PowerPoint file. So you'll see that you only have a few options there. You'll have the Excel format, which is by default. You can select to send it to the printer directly or generate PDF output or HTML output. So whatever Office application you're in is the only format you can generate that for unless it's PDF or HTML. Okay, so let's go back to our slides really quickly. I want to minimize this. Looks like we're at the top of the hour. So I would definitely want to respect your time, and before we wrap up, I do want to point out that our knowledge base, if you ever have a question about anything and don't want to reach out to our support team, you can always find it at our wiki.windward.net. website. If you, however, can't find your answer to your question, you can always reach out to our really friendly support help desk team at support.windward.net, or you can just simply email support@windward.net. Either way. And then the last thing, if you have changes that you want to see to AutoTag or a new feature you want an improvement for the AutoTag application plugin, you can always reach out to ideas.windward.net to insert this feature. We get feature requests almost daily. So if there's one out there, you can vote on it, and more votes, more likely you'll see that in a future release. And so, okay, that comes to our Q&A session. So we'll look at our questions queue. Looks like we do have one from Elisa. It says, can you show how to keep the tag tree open? I know that is a basic question, but I can't remember. No problem at all. So what I'll do is I'll go back to that for each sample template. Actually, I'll close this one and go out to our for each sample where I showed you that tag tree to begin with. It doesn't matter what template you're in. I'm just going back to what we saw earlier. So I'm going back to my for each tag. All you'll have to do is in your AutoTag menu ribbon, you'll see the tag tree button over here on the left. Just click that and it'll remain open for you. As long as you have this open, you expand your main story. Now, if you have a header section and footer section, you'll see those sections there. You can expand those. They'll be separate within your tree, your tag tree. But because I don't have a header, it looks like I have a header here. Since I don't have one, I'm actually not showing anything within a tag tree for that. And then when you want to close it, you can always just click the X button to get rid of that pane. So just click on the tag tree to open up the tag tree. Good question, by the way. Okay, so that looks like all the questions we have today. Thanks, Lise, for that. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I do want to mention that as we wrap up and I close the webinar, you'll notice there's a survey at the very end. Please be very candid with me. Let me know what I can improve on or what we can improve within the curriculum of the intermediate AutoTag training. Also, the last thing I did want to point out too, I get a lot of questions about XPath for XML and JSON path for JSON. I did want to kind of plug this really quickly. I want to open up my browser here. I'm going to go to our website, windward.net. There's a couple of blogs that I've written. If you go to the resources section, click on blog, and do a search on JSON path, for example, if you're using JSON data. Do a search on that. You'll see that I actually have a JSON basics blog. If you select that blog, you'll actually open up, kind of gives you an idea what the JSON basics are. And I even provide a tutorial on how to get you started with using basic functionality of JSON path. Now I have this for JSON path and I also have this for XPath. Again, the query language that you use to query your data is really the knowledge that you need to kind of retain or learn before you're actually querying your data correctly. So if there's certain data sources that you're using, I just showed SQL in this specific webinar, but it's all the same. JSON path, XPath, and so on. OData is another one of those data sources that we provide. So you'll have to learn those query languages too. So those are there for a quick reference. If you have questions about how to use JSON path or XPath, they're out there in our blog section of our website. Okay, thanks everyone for showing up, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.